is not here today, no sex. In case you were like hoping for. Jenna, that was the other thing you missed. We had snacks. What'd you have?
Fire.
I'm done. I was veggie strolled out like 2 years ago. We had like bags of them all the time the one summer, and
I was veggie strolled out too.
It became too much for me. All right, so we were taking a look at the uniforms with number 7. How about milk that we have here going on with number 8? Any ideas for the milk that he can no longer stomach? We're gonna pick on.
Austin. Definitely Austin. Yeah, let's do Tyler.
I haven't heard anything from Hannah in a while. What do you think? What you got for milk? Okay, yeah, and similar to what we had going on with mentioning with the uniform, that it was a sense of dignity, pride, purpose. One of the things that we also kind of reinforce about the uniform is it was something from his past. And now here with the milk, you have in the past, it was a favorite of his. Now in the present, as noted, it is something that he can no longer stomach, so it is a strong dislike of his. So if it was something that was a favorite and now it is a dislike, not going to be any shock to us based on the title of the story and everything that we've been mentioning so far. What has happened? We got to change. So that change, that's something, just like how Katie and I used to love veggie straws, and then we got kind of sick of them after a while. Here it's not, well, I've had too much of it, so I no longer like it. There's too much now of a change that has happened. So that past, that change where it was once human and now becoming, again, more bug-like, is certainly going to kind of emphasize a change that occurs. Something kind of subtle to also think about a little bit, and I wouldn't expect you to write this because it only talks about the milk. Who puts the milk out? Greta, the sister. Why does she put the milk out? Because she knows it is something that he does like. So at that beginning of part 2, where there is still some empathy, not empathy because she doesn't know what it's like to be Gregor, but there's still some sympathy. She's doing things that's trying to make him happy. We get a stark change of that happening by the time you're getting to the end of part 2, and certainly in the part 3, when you have that dust, junk, and just water and whatever's kind of being thrown around, if anything's being given to him. So there's even kind of like a change with Greta that happens there a little bit as well. Because they use, they use. Yeah, well, and I think yes, to answer your question, number 1, yes. When we say the story is called Metamorphosis, obviously the change that we focus on is going to be I'm just going to say quote unquote physical change, because who knows what really happens, but we focus on the physical change with Gregor. But there's also change in the way that Greta behaves towards him. There's a change in how the family structure is kind of set up. So yeah, something as simple as the milk can kind of symbolize all of those changes that are certainly starting to happen. So I think when it comes to the thematic sheet, my guess is most of us would probably consider putting milk under which one? Like, would you go personal identity, rules, alienation, or dehumanization? The fact that he no longer likes the milk, my gut would be saying most of us are going to put it. Maybe we don't know. Gia, what do you think? Okay. That's not the one that I was expecting, but that's okay because we can still make claims for it. I was thinking dehumanization would be a place that a lot of folks would go for putting it, simply because he doesn't come off as being human anymore. Milk, part 2, reason for it, seems less human by not liking it. Now, and again, remember that too is going to be for part 2. What are you thinking for personal identity? So struggle to figure out who he is. I mean, and really the whole transformation with him as a bud can kind of be like that. Do I like walking on the ground? Do I like going on the ceiling and falling on my back? Do I like being out in the open? Do I prefer to be underneath my couch with a sheet covering me so I don't scare Greta? So all of those things that he's trying to figure out what works best for him, yeah, you can go with personal identity. Exactly what you were saying about change within family, whatnot. I think that's probably going to go more so for, well, what is kind of like the expectation of family. You could even kind of change this one. Like, say you don't like the idea of rules or expectations of society or family, but you like the thematic idea about dealing with family, the difficulty of family, or the significance, the importance of feeling connected to a family. You could tweak that wording if you wanted to do something along those lines. But certainly with the milk, it getting mentioned in part 2, you kind of see some areas where there is a change in the way Gregor is treated by his family, where it goes from being something that was positive with the milk that it ends up being contrasted with like the dust and junk and all that extra stuff that's going into his now storage unit bedroom type place in the house. So if there's any of these things, like alarm clock that we have listed here, there's rules and expectations of society or family, you could end up putting it underneath another theme, so long as you got the ability to explain it to us in a pretty clear, succinct manner that's going to make sense. Now, number 9, I think, is where things start to get a little bit trickier, or maybe not quite as clear cut. We're jumping all the way up now into part 3 with the roomers, the boarders. The other term that gets used a lot with them is going to be the lodgers. So any of those things are going to be acceptable. What do we know about?
Well, I said kind of like how the family was like leaning off of Gregor for them giving him money, and how like the lodgers are kind of taking that place by living in their house, I guess.
Okay, so the family's kind of being taken over by other people, outside people. So lodgers kind of take over or live off of the family. So they're almost kind of being parasites in a way. Marissa? Okay, so we got a contrast as to now the family seems to care more about others than Gregor. Can you bring me food? No, I have to cook for those 3 strangers. You don't know them. I know. Sorry, Zach. Not gonna cook.
Maybe they probably, because I guess whenever they paying them money, just like the loans, they kind of like live there and like bought food. I like how like the lodgers are paying them to stay there, like, paying them like money. Is that kind of like the way Gregor is?
Yeah, well, and kind of like in some ways to what Marissa just said, it's almost like the lodgers now have replaced Gregor. So their money is going to replace Gregor's money. They're going to replace his kind of spot at the table. So you could even kind of argue that this is symbolizing that what's more important than family? Money is more important than family. And that's a thematic conflict that I think a lot of, work certainly would kind of take a look at. So, social expectations, what do they look like? There's 3 of them. Yeah, they're dressed nicely. They all have these long beards, these sophisticated kind of looking beards, little like prim and proper hats. They want everything to be tidy. They want everything to look the way that it's supposed to be in its place. They demand tidiness, and they also want the family to be tidy. They inspect the food. They don't always like the way the food is being prepared and whatnot. When Greta's playing the violin, they kind of look over her shoulder just to see if she's playing everything right. So there's kind of this way that they want things to be done. When they see Gregor kind of scuttle out of his room, they don't get terrified, but they look, and the one even kind of begins to smile a little bit, and then, hey, we're not going to pay for any of this kind of stuff. So they are very judgmental. And so if you don't fit within certain social expectations, then you can be judged quite harshly for it. So there is certainly a lot of judgment that would be taking place on part of the roomers and the boarders. So all of these things end up being accurate. And the nice thing about it is basically these can fit into really any of those themes that we're looking at. But I think one of the main things that they do is there's a lot of expectation as to this is how you are supposed to be, this is how you're supposed to look, this is how you're supposed to fit. And if you're an outsider to that, then you're worthless. Whether it be a minion at work or the way that they're just going to judge and kind of laugh at you here with the boarders taking a look at them. They're also a little bit of comic relief in a way. That the story is so kind of weird and out there that they kind of start complaining about things. Dad kicks them out, without any problem. So they're a little bit more bark than they are bite, but they still have that expectation that they're looking for. So within the thematic idea, I think a lot of these things you could certainly take a look at. The main one, talking with the borders both within family and society, I think they end up fitting in pretty well. About music. I think that. So, I mean, if anything, it is a love of both Gregor and Greta's. Which isn't going to get necessarily into that symbolic idea quite yet, but it certainly establishes that it is something that he definitely likes. Is there anyone here who likes music?
Oh, love it. Love it to death.
Love music. Love music. Sure. What about like accordion music? Focus. I bring in my accordion, which I don't have. So we all like music. Jason, you like music? You sure? Positive. Okay, keep the head up. So, it's something that he definitely likes. Now, Marissa, you have a hand up. So the fact that Keith raises his hand, or the fact that Jason likes music, is proof that they are people and not animals, or some other kind of being. So there is certainly a human quality to it. It is something that humans create. It is something that humans like. And Tyler said it's important to Gregor. So if music is for people, and music is important to Gregor, therefore Gregor is still, there's still some kind of shred of humanity that is within him. It's something that pulls him out of his room. It's something that he does like. So there is still, at least the potential for human qualities within Gregor. So even though he might be his boss's minion, even though the lodgers could be replacing Gregor within the family, it's important to note that Gregor is still going to be equal to, being a human. There is something left in him. He hasn't been completely discarded. It hasn't all gone away for him yet. So when you're kind of getting to this, and again, this can kind of go in a couple things. I think you could do it for struggle for identity, where, is it to the point that there is no return for Gregor, that he can't come back? Well, no, the music helps prove to him, that he still has some human qualities to him. If you're taking a look at the dehumanization that is happening to him, there's still going to be some elements of him being human, that he hasn't been completely dehumanized yet. Based on what Tyler said, why could I even kind of put this under something here with family? Okay, so it's something that his sister's partaking in and something that he wants to enjoy, Tyler? You had a hand too. Why could we put this up here with family? So it's still something that he wants Greta to be able to succeed with at the conservatory, and even when she's playing it within the apartment, he's going to be coming out of his room. So there's still some kind of importance for family for him in some way. Do you want to add another thing? And so that, do you remember which part that detail comes out in? It's not an act because we're not going to go and play. But yeah, part 2, we learn about what his plan is for the conservatory. So this could even be something that while we're thinking part 3, because that's when Greta's playing it, it could happen in other parts of it as well, such as being like part 2. And also, how can we throw it in this place with alienation, isolation? True. So in the sense that since she'll play it for the strangers, it's not something, hey Gregor, let me play the violin or the harmonica or the xylophone for you and come into your room to kind of make you happy. That's one. And if he is the fact that he is isolated, but what does the music force him to do? Actually to kind of come out of his isolation for a little bit. It ends up not being successful for him. But at least it's something that does kind of bring him out. So even the playing of the music, whether it's the refusal to play for him or the fact that he's willing to kind of come out and try to risk things a little bit because of the music, I think could go in that isolation way as well. So you got some potential to do some different things, certainly, with that one. Again, it's going to be up to which ones you find to be most comforting. Oops, wrong. Apples. So this is going to be a good answer. Hayden, we'll come to you then. So you would say emphasizes the separation between father and son? That's restroom worthy. Hayden, do you have one?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like the belief that
What was the first part before?
resenting.
Okay. And in the sense that you're, Hayden, you didn't clean your room. I'm not going to throw an apple at you. Where a squirrel or something gets into the house, we're going to be looking for whatever just to try to get the squirrel kind of out. So some of that dehumanization kind of taking place. So resentment toward, I'm going to put Gregor in quotation marks because chances are father doesn't really view him as being Gregor anymore at that point.
I feel like there's an obvious point to make here about like the emphasis on him being more of a pest than an actual human, but personally what I see is that since the apple does get lodged into his abdomen, I think,
Mhm.
I personally view that as sort of like a timer for how much, I guess, humanity he does have left. Since he can't get it out, and through the story it is progressively rotting until the point where he does die, and I think the apple has completely like rotted out at that point.
So apple rots as Gregor rots. And what Ethan just did is notice, and like, not that we were putting periods and semicolons in what you were saying, but we got about a 2 or 3 sentence explanation. which is what you're going to have to do with your symbol, because you can't just go, hey, music's a symbol. Now I'm going to tell you what it symbolizes, but there has to be some kind of connection as to like why going with it. Is that?
How like it's like lodged in there, and how like every time you hear about it, you're a constant reminder that like he's still like being demonized.
It's something that he can see. Okay. And he has a wound at the beginning of part 2 from the end of part 1 where his one leg's hurting a little bit and he's scraped. He's maybe beginning to recover from that a little bit, or at least feeling comfortable. And now another obstacle is kind of coming his way with the apple. Sure, that can all work. There's also an argument that's out there by a lot of critics, not meaning disliking the book, but literary critics, where why choose an apple as opposed to like a banana, a pear, or something along those lines? And they go back to the idea of original sin, Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, where the serpent tempts Eve with the apple. That this is kind of like a sinful reminder that you don't belong here. Since Eve bites the apple,
No, humans are first.
well, what happens? Like literally, what happens to her and Adam? They get kicked out. He can't stay here. You got to go someplace else. And Gregor is not, even though he's not completely removed, but Gregor is getting kind of kicked out of the family that you don't belong here. One thing that we didn't touch on was the cleaning lady. You notice the cleaning lady disposes of them in like 5 minutes, and we have no idea what she does. So I have no idea what happens to him. But the cleaning lady's like, I'll take care of it, and then Gregor's gone. Or she does like in 5 minutes with the family. Who knows if they would ever be able to do.
He's a lifestyle book, so it's just like.
Okay. Stupid question. Did you say that Kafka was Jewish?
He is.
So.
Why would you make a biblical reference?
Personally, I feel like,
You have to
all
balance
right,
it.
well, I mean, why would the apple be a reference to Adam and Eve if A, it was the non-specified fruit wasn't even an apple, it was just a fruit, and he's Jewish. Adam and Eve was a Christian story.
First 4 books of the Bible, though, are still going to be part of Jewish Holy Scripture. So Genesis, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Exodus are going to be Jewish texts as well. One thing, too, and regardless of, like, generally in most works, you can make some kind of religious connection. And it's not always because Kafka or, like, the book that we're reading, like, the previous period where we're making some, is that they're always intentionally doing it. Just about all cultures, all religions have some kind of like creation story. They all just about have some kind of like savior story. So there's going to be those natural parallels that kind of exist. One of the things, speaking though of him being Jewish, where at the time that he's writing this one, he's looking into a lot of like Jewish mystical folklore. So that mystical quality of changing into another being kind of like matches up with it a little bit. And some wonder if, one of his reasons for feeling that alienation, that isolation, is kind of part of the diaspora that would be taking place for Jewish people, during that 19th, 20th century. So I don't know if it would be something that is purposely being done by him. I think there's the potential that it could be subconsciously influencing him. Not gonna know, really forever for sure.
Is it like, does it go to like a doctor like part 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, why like we never hear about like that?
Well, they go for like, well, I think again part of it's going to be kind of like part of that dream sequence where like why does the serving girl keep showing up in parts 1 and part 2? They'll make reference to being fired, but then kind of coming back and all that stuff. There's a lot of details that just never quite make sense. Big thing is go get the doctor and go get the locksmith. But since the door does get opened, that's what kind of keeps Greta from going to get either of those two. But the cleaning lady still is like, I'm out of here. And then she's still there in part 2, or the serving girl, the cook. So there are still going to be some things where, well, how come and that's kind of part of that. I hate using it because it sounds like a cop-out. That's part of that like Kafka-esque kind of where reality and the dream sequence is never quite, aligned completely.
feel like maybe with the like three, like it was three of them, right? Like three of the
Talking about the lodgers.
yeah, the lodgers.
Yeah.
Like maybe you think that they were trying to represent like the rabbis of it, like the judgmental like rabbis and stuff. Jewish
Well, or
rabbis.
like maybe not even just necessarily the rabbis, but if with them being Jewish, they are going to be in an automatic minority with where they would be living in the first place.
Yeah, you're
So if they're coming in and kind of being critical of the whole family, and keep in mind, it never does say that the Samsa family is Jewish.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
Kafka's
Right,
family
right,
is. So it depends upon how much of a parallel you're going to be doing with that. But there could already kind of be a downcast happening from European society in general towards the family just because of their cultural, religious, beliefs. And that could be part of the reason for that criticism that would be taking place. Last thing, and then we'll move on to Dust and Junk.
Katie, I actually really like that idea because note how the lodgers are one of the very few people in the story who don't initially lose it at the sight of
Yeah.
Gregor in the first place. They just sort of go, huh? And I think the only other person who really did that was the elderly.
The cleaning lady
Yeah,
down here.
Yeah, so I feel like that does hold some weight to it.
How about Dust and Junk? Which we've kind of already talked about. Why are they putting that stuff in there? Keith? Okay, so, where do you put your junk? In some place that you don't want to worry about it, garbage can, things like that. Where are you going to get rid of stuff? You're going to put it in a location that doesn't matter. Where do the Christmas decorations go that we don't use 11 months out of the year? Basement for us, attic, but places where you're not going to kind of run into it. So dust and junk, most part, it's going to go into a place that is overall uninhabited and unnecessary to enter, or to go to. And so basically that means that Gregor is no longer necessary at that point. And really 13, you're kind of going into this same way a little bit too, or cleaning out the furniture, where he's kind of becoming less human at that point, that they're going to be doing things on their own. Since we're kind of starting to come down here to a close, a couple things I want to look at. I think this is one that people can sometimes maybe not be sure about.
Yeah, I'm
Talked about the picture already with page 3 and 13. Why attach himself to it?
This is lost like every other part of the thing you into, and that's the last thing you notice.
Okay, so this one's coming in part 2. So at least at this point, it's attach himself to. You said like the last thing that he has or possesses. Possesses. I can spell that right. And keep in mind, these things are happening simultaneously. So those human elements are being taken away. So as things are being removed, this is that one thing, that final thing that you want to have at least some sense of maybe control over. So trying to prevent that dehumanization from fully taking place. What about the broom for the cleaning lady? And the fact that she's the one that kind of like disposes of the body. Aiden?
Gregor's father tells her to stop poking him through. Yeah, like maybe they're sort of like realizing that Gregor died now, and they're kind of upset about it.
Okay, or like it's kind of finished. And the thing that, like, she pokes him with the broom to see if he's still
Alive.
alive.
Still, he's
Not even
stuck.
And, I mean, hopefully never in a situation where you're checking to see if someone's alive or something like that. What do you do?
Call 911.
Okay, and which, I mean, doesn't seem like that is going to be an option for him right there at that time, but there's going to still at least be some concern over it. So, is their breath coming out? Do you feel a pulse or something along? Do you put your head on to see, like, if there's kind of a heartbeat? Where if you're out in the yard and, like, there's a bird, don't touch it. Make sure you use a stick or put a glove on it to see if it's still alive. It's kind of getting treated like it's an animalistic type thing where if it's a human, you would expect that there would be more human contact to see if it's being alive. The fact that the broom's getting used to check for like a pulse or any kind of signs of life, even the cleaning ladies may be looking at him as not being human. But you're right, it's to the point where okay, enough's enough. We know he's not. We know he's not here at this point. And then they have that switch. Where remember we talked about what's her change in language that happens towards Gregor? It switches from he was an it before, and now it kind of comes over to a he. So you can even kind of have that symbolism, that little kind of change of okay, looking at him as a person. But the fact that you're using a broom to check for life, is something that would be very unhuman at this point, or unhuman, whatever that kind of looks like. Last one. How about letters?
They basically took a day off, and then kind of was like,
So it essentially establishes that there is a double standard. So I know we weren't doing a whole bunch here with the alienation page, or excuse me, for the metaphor, the theme page, as we were looking for things. Struggle for personal identity. The picture that we were mentioning there in part 2 could certainly be one that you're looking at. When it comes to alienation, isolation, the picture, the broom, those could all certainly be things. The rules or expectations of society, talked about the lodgers quite a bit. Those letters within part 3 would certainly be something because those rules, those expectations can change quite a bit. And dehumanization, you could pretty put just about anything that we have done. So I want you, if you haven't already, start thinking about, of those 4 themes, which ones do you think you can explore most successfully? Or is there a 5th theme that you want to incorporate? Then start to look at what do I have for part 1, what do I have for part 2, what do I have for part 3. One thing to make sure, since we haven't mentioned this yet, you cannot double dip. Meaning, you're not going to use like a reference of the apple in part 2, and then the apple still being lodged in the skin in part 3. So you're going to go with